Alrighty, welcome in to the Blitz pod. We're doing something a little bit different tonight. I'm actually going to be hosting. This is going to be your host, Tyler, for the evening. Kane is on his away weekend trip, I think. But I'm joined here by Mitch and Jaden. We're going to be breaking down what happened last night between the Saints and Cardinals, and then dive into our Week 7. It's crazy to think that Week 7 picks as far as what games we like. Go over some spreads of the games as well, and then we'll probably sign off after that. But how you guys doing tonight, Jaden? I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Since we don't have Kane, I have had to wrestle with this stream thing for the last definitely not 3 hours.
20 minutes.
For like the last 15 minutes. It was a bit of a hassle, but but yeah, we're here. We've made it, and hopefully this isn't all for nothing, and hopefully we actually get to publish this video.
That's the dream, isn't it? Mitch, how you doing?
I'm doing good, as long as this doesn't end up like me and Jaden's 2021 redraft, where we had to record it 2 times through. But hey, we got to live with these things, because we're trying to bring you more content more often and not be entirely reliant on Kane's schedule, so we have a little bit of flexibility.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's kind of what this came down to. Is Kane's been bottled down by having to host it every single time, him having the software and everything to do it. And like Jaden said, spent a little bit of time, not too much, but just a little bit of time today, getting into it and figuring out all the nuances. And we're hoping it goes smoothly tonight, and hopefully we'll be able to have some good content for you on when this goes out on YouTube and Spotify, Apple Music, everything like that. So yeah, I guess, without further ado, we will jump into the Thursday night recap. We finally had some freaking points in a Thursday night game. The Cardinals were able to take care of business at home, which was I think their first win in like 7 or 8 games at home. They took down the Saints 42-34 last evening. Couple of stats to run through. Big thing in this game was the 2 pick sixes right before half that kind of dictated the rest of the game. Andy Dalton, he did have those 2 pick sixes, but he was 30 of 47 for 361 and 4 touchdowns. He also had another pick, so he had 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Alvin Kamara eclipsed 100 yards again, including 7 catches. I think he had like 49 on the ground and like 56 through the air. Olave coming in 7 catches, 106 yards after he missed last week due to the concussion that he suffered in week 5. And then we also had Juwan Johnson. He seems like he might be a nice little tight end streaming option as long as Troutman's out. He had 2 touchdowns again, so he seems to be getting some targets from Dalton. Taysom Hill sniped a nice touchdown away from Alvin Kamara. So if you started Taysom Hill tight end, you reap the benefits there once again this week. Over on the Cardinals side, Kyler Murray, 20 of 29, 204, and a touchdown. Pretty modest game for him as far as the statistics and fantasy implications are concerned. Eno Benjamin, 12 for 92 on the ground. I will say he had 45 of those on 1 carry, but he did throw him a touchdown and added in 4 catches, as well. DeAndre Hopkins, welcome back. 10 catches, 103 yards, no touchdowns, but he definitely was gobbling up targets, which we had anticipated was going to happen with the injury to Hollywood Brown. So first of all, my big question with this is, the Cardinals are in a division right now. And I know, if you've been living under a rock for the last 24 hours and didn't hear about the Christian McCaffrey news, he has been traded to the San Francisco 49ers, which we discussed pretty extensively in Engage 8. I know Jaden, you and Kane hopped on a segment. But, in this division, you've got the 3-3 Seattle Seahawks. You've got the 3-3 Los Angeles Rams. And you've got the 3-3 San Francisco 49ers, and now the 3-4 Cardinals. Is the Cardinals season kind of back on track? What do you guys think, and what are kind of your main takeaways from the game?
Well, personally, I think it's kind of a little bit of a crapshoot in the NFC West at this point, because the 49ers seem like they should take it away. But like Jaden mentioned, that entire injury report is a playoff team in its own. And they just can't seem to find their way to health every year. But in the meantime, I think the Cardinals have a fighting shot because they have Kyler Murray and they have his favorite target back. And Marquise Brown is not supposed to be out the rest of the year. So it's not like they're going to be dead weight towards the end of the year just throwing DeAndre Hopkins until he wears down. The defense is a little bit to worry about, but they showed their strides last night, getting 3 picks off of Andy Dalton, who is at best an upper echelon backup at this point in his career, but he's still not a complete scrub like some other guys. But the Saints are in trouble, in my opinion, because they've fallen way too many games due to similar injuries to the 49ers. Not quite season ending, but it's not looking pretty in New Orleans.
The one thing I'll say about the Cardinals defense is ever since week 1, their defense has actually been pretty decent. They've allowed 23 to the Raiders in overtime. They allowed 20 to the Rams, 16 to the Panthers, 20 to the Eagles, 19 to the Seahawks, and then there were 34 by the Saints last night. A lot of that was garbage time. But the defense has actually been pretty solid over the last 5 to 6 weeks, which I know Jaden touched on it earlier in the year with this not being, at least on paper, not a great defense. The guy that's really turned it, Zach Allen's been a force on their defensive line, and J.J. Watt's been there too, obviously. But Jaden, what's your opinion, I guess, on the Cardinals? And then if you want to transition into the Saints, I know you've got some concerns with them, not only this season, but looking forward as well.
Yeah, I mean, the Cardinals looked a lot better than they have been all year. Obviously, getting Nuke Hopkins back was pretty big for them. They gave him, I believe it was 14 targets in his first game. Nobody else on the team had more than 2. So he's filling right into Hollywood and being that target monster. But now you're never going to, or not never, but it's going to be a while before we get to see what they're going to be moving forward. And even then, by the end of the season, we're still like trying to figure out what his role is going to be, because it takes 3-4 weeks to try and implement a receiver like that in with a superstar like DeAndre Hopkins, and they're also going to have to learn how to get Robbie Anderson involved. But as far as New Orleans goes, man, I don't know if this is necessarily a hot take or something, but they can go one of 2 ways with this. They could start now and blow it up like tomorrow, because they're 2-5. You think about guys like Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, they're both 34 years old. Like, they're an older team. You could blow it up tomorrow, but guess what? Your first round pick belongs to the 6-0 Philadelphia Eagles. So even if you do just, lose out, you go 2-15, Bryce Young, those guys aren't even going to be available for you, because your pick belongs to the Eagles because you thought you were a Trevor Penning away from being a Super Bowl contender, which clearly is not the case. Both your quarterbacks aren't under contract next year, and even if they were, are you super excited about Jameis Winston at this point? Probably not. Or you could just go all in at the trade deadline here, trade away all your draft picks for this class, go all in. If it doesn't work, then blow it up. Because like I said, this team's old. You don't really have many choices moving forward. For basically all I can remember about football, the Saints have been at least average to above average for the last 10 or 12 years. But, going all in every single year with these older guys, eventually it's going to catch up to you. And it seems as if it started to, just between the injury bug and these guys getting older, man. I can't see a world in which the Saints are legit Super Bowl contenders unless they, luck into a superstar quarterback somehow.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that, especially from the offensive side, because the line is there, but, they lost Armstead. Ruiz is solid. I think McCoy's been pretty solid as well. But, Michael Thomas, we touched on him, he's so injury prone. When's he ever going to play a full season? Outside of him, I know Olave's looked great. There's not much depth at wide receiver after that. They were going to Kevin White last night. He made a resurgence. I haven't heard that name in I don't know how long. Rashid Shaheed is another guy that just kind of came on the scene. Camaro will still be there. But, yeah, the quarterback is a huge question mark, and I agree. Is it time to try and sell this idea that you've had and rebuild, just because what you've got in the cap space and what you've got in your depth at a lot of other positions is not where you really want to be. And I am not a huge believer in Dennis Allen either. I think he was a tie-me-over coach, and they're going to go out and hit a home run hire here in the next 3 or 4 years, and he's kind of just going to be fed to the dogs. But, yeah, I think there's absolutely some big question marks down in the Big Easy. Other than that, any other major takeaways from this game? Like I said, I know that it pushes the Cardinals to 3-4. That kind of gives them a fighting chance. You have to assume the Saints' season's kind of done now at 2-5. The Saints are going to be playing the Raiders night before Halloween, and then on that same night or same day as well, the Cardinals are going to the Vikings. So big test for the Cardinals, big test for the Saints as well. What do we think about those upcoming games with those teams?
I mean, I think that's a big test for Arizona. I mean, this is a big momentum win. Like the Saints, they're 2-5 now, but coming into this game, like this is still a good Saints team. There's good players on it, and if you're the Arizona Cardinals, especially you lose to Seattle the week before, there's a lot of questions around this team, especially when you lose a Hollywood Brown. That's a momentum win. If they can go out and beat the 5-1, potentially 6-1 when they play Vikings, I mean that does a lot for your season. You're now, 4-4, and
back to 500, yeah.
And the questions about Cliff Kingsbury maybe go a little bit by the wayside. Now you've got Hopkins back. You could put some momentum together here and kind of reverse the script that's been going on for the past couple of years with them. Of they start hot and then they finish really poorly and then flame out in the playoffs or don't even make it there. Now this year they start out really poorly and maybe they get hot at the right time and go on a run.
Complete opposite of what they've done, in previous years.
My big takeaway is probably that these are going to be teams fighting for that one of those last wild card spots in the NFC. And the NFC is kind of top-loaded at the moment in terms of records and stuff like that. So long-term, this could have some major implications that the Saints just could not get healthy enough. And they're probably one of the best rosters all around in the league. But when you're missing as many players as they are, it's hard to keep up with the rest of the league.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that pretty much does it for Thursday night. Like I said, I was excited to just finally see some points in a Thursday night game because it seems like every single week has been absolute duds. Chiefs-Chargers was a pretty exciting game, unfortunately for Mitch. But other than that, let's get into one of our. What's that?
That was a rough Thursday.
Yeah, I can imagine. That pick six pretty much determined that entire game.
No, the season flashed before my eyes on that one hit.
with Herbert being hurt.
I could have cared less about the pick six after that.
Very true. Very true. But yeah, let's get back into something that I know we haven't really done I think we've been, like 1 week on, 1 week off with our picks, but I think we're going to get back into that realm and really start to hit those hard every single week. So we're going to go ahead and hop into our week 7 picks. It's going to be some good games. I know early on there's some pretty good games, but the one thing that really jumped out to me right away was just some of these spreads, in the 6 and 7 point range for a lot of these home teams, which makes you want to think there's going to be blowouts this week. But what have we come to realize in this league? That no game's a gimme, and there's so much parity up and down where the worst team can beat the best team, and we see it week in and week out. So let's hop into our first game. Falcons at the Bengals. The Bengals are a 6.5 point favorite. Bengals coming off that win down in New Orleans last week. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase hooked up for a couple of touchdowns in that game. And the Falcons are, I believe, still the only undefeated team against the spread in football. They are 6-0 against the spread, coming off a big win for them against San Francisco. I know San Francisco had a hefty injury report, but still, the Falcons have climbed themselves to 3-3 after an 0-2 start. And, they're going to be one of those teams that Mitch was talking about, fighting for that final wild card spot. My initial takeaways from this game is this is a game that Cincinnati has to win. If you're going to get back to the playoffs and you're going to be one of the juggernauts in the AFC, you got to win this game. It's at home. It's back in front of your home fans. We know that Atlanta is still missing Cordarrelle Patterson. We know that T. Higgins looks like he's back healthy now. He was not mentioned on the injury report this week, so he looks to be good to go. And that's my biggest takeaway, is that this has got to be almost a must-win for the Bengals. But I'll pass it over to you guys before we really get into our picks for this game.
For me, I think this is a little bit about the Falcons because obviously this is a big topic for us. We've talked about the Falcons ad nauseum. And if you want to be considered one of these like tier 2 teams that we're like putting them into the conversation with, you've got to go out and, beat a Bengals team that we have, number 6 right now, something like that, with all these superstars on it. And you have to beat these teams, or at least play it close. I know that they're 6-0 against the spread, so they've been doing that, and that's one of you and Kane's big arguments. I was very glad to have Mitchell on today, so that way I could have somewhat of a voice of reason on like the Falcons and the Giants and teams like that. So that's pretty nice. But there is like this one phenomenon with like Jamar Chase and teams that haven't seen Jamar Chase before. And when they play Jamar Chase for the first time, he lights them up because like his speed and what he does like doesn't show up on tape. But the funny thing is that AJ Terrell at Clemson saw Jamar Chase a couple times, and yeah, and it was kind of rough for AJ Terrell. So this is a little bit of a revenge game for him. I did like a lot of what I saw from the Bengals offense last week. I talked about that. That's moving in the right direction after being really stagnant for the first couple weeks. It felt like inside zones and 4 verticals almost every play. Now they're getting a little bit more creative, and they're not running the ball in second and long. Like they're letting the ball get the ball in Joe Burrow's hands. Let him work with Jamar Chase, because I feel like that. Like I know it sounds simple, but that's your best offense right now. So I think they need to do that, and they could potentially come out with a win against the juggernaut Atlanta Falcons.
See, as much as this might be about the Falcons because of what our conversations and discussions have been about, I really think this is about the Bengals, because this is a game that you are a 6.5 point favorite. They should win this game by 2 touchdowns, especially as a paper guy, as they going off paper. This team should blow out this team. Mitch, quick question: who's the only team in the NFL that hasn't allowed a second half touchdown this season?
Second half touchdown? I'm going to take a guess that it's the Atlanta Falcons.
It's actually the Cincinnati Bengals.
Cincy.
So Cincy's D in the second half has been one of, if not the best, in the National Football League. So that's why I think that this is where you've got to show your macho. You know, you've got to show that you are a top dog in this league. And we haven't seen teams do it against the Falcons. So who's going to be a team that actually does it against the Falcons? What do you think about this, Mitch?
I think that this is definitely a game that the Bengals need to assert their dominance, like we've been saying so far. I mean, we have them at 6 in our power rankings, but they're 3-3, and they've had some rough outings. Granted, at first it looked like it was just Joe Burrow trying to find his stride again after having a very, very limited preseason due to his appendix removal. But other than that, I think this might be the defense that really has to test that connection between Higgins and Burrow more, because I got to imagine Jamar Chase is going to be their game plan to stop. After looking at what they just did to a division rival last week, who came in slightly underprepared for the likes of Jamar Chase, I got to imagine they're going to double down on trying to limit that. See if they can actually manage a game plan to overcome that and stop that Atlanta Falcons run game, because that's what they do. They're going to run the piss out of the ball.
Yeah, and the other thing to keep in mind is, Casey Hayward's on IR. And AJ Terrell was limited this past week too, so there's definitely some injury concerns there for the Falcons on their defensive side. The Falcons also this season have scored 37 points in the first quarter, which is actually the 3rd most in football, which I found to be pretty interesting. So if they can get off to a hot start, who knows what will happen? As we talked about, the Bengals don't give up a lot up in the second half, but it seems like the Falcons do most of their damage early on in the game. The other thing that I did want to note is that we already talked about it was the 6-0 against the spread. But other than that, let's hop into our picks for this game. And I'm going to go off spread purposes as well. I'm going to take the Bengals on the money line, and I'm going to take the Bengals on the spread.
Yeah, I'm probably going to go the same as well. I do, like I said, I believe in the Cincinnati team. I was vouching for them to be pretty high. It's just a matter of, are they going to let the ball be in Joe Burrow's hands more times than not? You got to win these, these 2nd and long, 3rd and long situations. You can't be handing the ball off to Joe Mixon in the same formation that you've been running all game and expect good things to happen. And this is still a dormant, this is still a bad Falcons defense. I know they've had some turnover luck so far this year, but they have no pass rush to put pressure on Cincinnati, which is how you beat Cincinnati. You beat them with pressure, because that offensive line, despite all their moves, is still not as good as they'd like it to be, but they just don't have the guys to do that right now. So I think Cincinnati covers the spread, and they're going to win this game.
I think Cincy wins, but I think Atlanta manages to cover, because while you said you're going to need pass rush, they still have the likes of Grady Jarrett, and then out of Penn State, I'm blanking on his name, but they have Ebiketie, but they're young and up and coming, and I think they have a chance to put enough pressure and just play 2 high safeties and kind of force the action underneath and turn it more into a game management situation than what the Bengals like to do and just beat you over the top with Jamar Chase. And this team can run the clock out even if they are losing. They're still going to run the ball. It's going to be fairly low scoring for what you'd want for this big of a spread. And a touchdown is a hard thing to cover in this league, especially against a team that's as feisty as the Falcons.
Yeah, and the other thing you kind of mentioned on it is kind of the battle of two different schemes here, because the Falcons are going to be doing a lot of zone reads, and it's one of the best rushing attacks in football. And in my mind, Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard, those two guys have got to contain Mariota. If they can contain Mariota in that tackle box, I think that the Bengals could run away with this game.
I would like to say that I am not quite as high as 6 on the Bengals. So that's partially why I don't think they'll cover, because they have a solid, well-built team, but that defense is just kind of lacking that upper echelon talent. They have a bunch of guys you're fine starting, but nobody that really is like true game changer.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. All right, well let's dive into our next game on the slate, and that is I love this game. I think this game is going to be one of the best games of the week. The Lions at the Cowboys. The Cowboys come in as 6.5-point favorites. Once again, one of those 6-7 point lines. Cowboys, I believe last week came off the loss on Sunday Night Football against the Eagles. And the Lions are coming off their bye, which I think is an extremely vital part in this, because the Lions are going to be getting back Amon-Ra St. Brown, DeAndre Swift. I don't think DJ Chark's back, but they're getting back two of their best offensive playmakers in this game. And the other thing, everybody talks about, Dak coming back this week, but those guys I think might be a bigger story for what's going to happen in this game, more so than Dak coming back. The other thing to keep in mind, I know this Dallas defense is great, but here's a little nugget for you. The Lions, their offensive line has given up 7 sacks in 6 games. That's 1 sack a game. And I know how great Micah Parsons has been. I know how great DeMarcus Lawrence has been. But I really like this Lions line, and I know that this 6.5 is there. But, man, if I'm picking an underdog money line bet, I would probably take the Lions this week. And I'll go ahead and say it. I'm taking the Lions on the spread, and I'm going to take the Lions on the money line in the upset down in the Big D. What do you guys think? Go for it, Jaden.
This is going to, whatever the point total is, I'm probably taking the over here, just because the Lions offense has been good. It did, start to slow down a little bit, but you are getting Amon-Ra St. Brown back this week. You are getting DeAndre Swift back this week. And you have an offensive line that can hold Micah Parsons long enough for Jared Goff to get the ball away, which is something that not a lot of teams have, but they do have that virtue. And Dallas Cowboys are getting Dak Prescott back, and the Lions defense is far, I think it's by 3 or 4 points per game, the worst defense in the league. So this could be a big Dak game. I know personally, I picked up Dak in fantasy for someone that dropped him for the Jalen Hurts bye, and that's lined up pretty nicely when he plays Detroit. And you could see fireworks here for this Dallas offense. Maybe shut up all the people that wanted Cooper Rush to start for some godforsaken reason with a nice little game here against the worst defense in the league. You got all your playmakers ready. Zeke Elliott even looked pretty good last week. So, I mean, that's definitely something to build off of. If maybe he wants to run whenever Tony Pollard has a good game, it feels like the next game Zeke comes back and he performs a little bit better, which is, obviously what you want to do if you want to keep your job. But for this game, I'm probably taking Dallas on both, just because I feel like this Dak being back, if they were able to compete and be a above average team, I mean, even possibly you could consider it being better than that. With Cooper Rush, you add Dak Prescott in here, and you should see a lot of good football. They could be maybe going into next week's power rankings, they could be that 4th team behind the Eagles, Bills, and Chiefs that we've been trying to figure out, and that's been changing pretty much every week. Just the only thing that I am worried about is if we remember back to last year, we saw Russell Wilson come back from his little finger injury and looked pretty terrible. And if we see the same thing with Dak here, that would obviously tarnish the pick that I just made.
Well, and the other thing is, if you're following us on TikTok, Dak was our start for the week at the quarterback position. So obviously we all think he's going to have a pretty good game. But I do worry a little bit when your team is kind of clicking the way the Cowboys have been clicking, and now you throw the old quarterback back in. Does that mess up any of the chemistry that's going to be going on in that Dallas locker room?
I think it could, just because entirely new player, you're going to have to play a different game style for Dak than you would with Cooper Rush. Just because he has more talent and ability at his disposal, they're going to be willing to take those shots a little more. But like Jaden said, I am a little worried about the thumb because you kind of need to be able to grip that ball pretty well to swing it.
For sure.
And
we've, like you said, we saw it with Russell Wilson last year. So I agree with you on that. What else were you going to add?
I do think that this Lions offensive line is going to keep Parsons in check because they are good at every position on the O-line. And granted, the Cowboys have faced some rough opponents. I mean, Evan Neal was not prepared for the likes of Micah Parsons when they played the Giants. He flat out embarrassed him. I think the Lions are going to be feisty this week, and they're going to keep in it. And they're one of those teams that can cover the spread but not quite win games. So I think that the Cowboys still manage to win this, but I think the Lions cover, and it's going to be a shootout.
Yeah, the over-under is 49. So that's interesting to note because if you're looking at that, 51 points is 27-24 if you're looking at a football score when you're looking at over-unders. So I think that if you've got like Michael Gallup, if you've got both Pollard and Zeke, if you got CeeDee Lamb, Dak, all these guys, I would be starting this game. And same thing on the Lions side. I would probably still start Swift, Amon-Ra, Hawkinson, possibly Goff, depending on your quarterback situation in your league, especially with bye weeks where they are right now. But I agree with you guys that I think it's going to be a shootout. So we got Mitch on the Lions spread, Cowboys money line, and Jaden's on Cowboys money line, Cowboys spread, and I'm on Lions money line, Lions spread.
Yeah.
So I think the Lions are going to get their second win.
DeAndre Swift moving forward was like a weird player when he was playing because he was getting like these big runs and he was getting some targets, but Jamal Williams felt like he was getting all the touchdowns, and it wasn't just like on the 1 yard line. Like he would just break off like a 15-yard touchdown run. And as somebody who had DeAndre Swift and like he's on Kane's team, who Kane is 1-5, so Kane could be somebody who's looking to sell a little bit. I don't know.
It's always great. It's always great shitting on Kane when he's not on the pod too.
I mean, well, that's really why we don't have him on the pod, so we can do this. But what are you guys' opinion on like DeAndre Swift moving forward? Because he isn't a dynamite offense, but we've seen Jamal Williams step in and play well, and even when DeAndre Swift was there, he was taking up some of the catches, some of the rushing work, and some of the touchdowns.
I mean, I was going to say, I still think you're starting him. I mean, I still think he's in that RB1, RB2 conversation. And the reason being because of how slim the running back position is. Now we're into bye weeks as well, which means it's going to be even more slim. And now you have a guy like Jeff Wilson, who you might have been looking at as your RB2. He's now completely gone into oblivion more than likely. Elijah Mitchell is going to come back, but like how much is he going to incorporate into that 49ers offense?
Alexander Madison moving forward.
There you go. So, like, these guys that you might have been depending on your RB2 are no longer there, whereas you're going to need a guy like Swift. And if you drafted him in, the second round, I mean, you have no choice at this point in the fantasy season but to roll with him. I still think he's going to be putting up, anywhere from 8 to his floor. I think he can have those weeks of 20+, so I don't think that's out of the realm.
I do think that he is going to end up with more touchdowns than what he had and get a little less snipe because he did injure his ankle week 1. He looked amazing in that game. He still broke off big plays the next week, but
I think
he was hobbled, and they didn't want to overrun him.
I think he had 2 50-yard runs. Actually, I know he had 2 50-yard runs because he was on my team. 2 50-yard runs in which he got tackled within the 5. So I was pretty hot at that, watching that for 2 straight weeks on Red Zone.
Well, I think that probably does it for the Lions-Cowboys. Like I said, I think that's going to be a great game, shootout type of atmosphere. It's going to be hyped around, obviously, Dak's return. But like I said, don't forget about Swift and Amon-Ra coming back. But yeah, let's bump into the next game on the slate. Another great game. Division title aspirations in this game. We've got the Colts, who have now won back-to-back games at the Tennessee Titans, who are coming off a bye. The line in this game is Tennessee by 2.5, so field goal game is what they're anticipating. You're going to be getting Jonathan Taylor back in this game if you're Indianapolis. I don't think Shaquille, aka Darius Leonard, is going to be coming back in this game. I think he's still out with his injury. But I personally think the Colts are the better team. Jaden touched on it a couple weeks ago. This is the lowest point that they're going to be going into that Broncos game, and they came out victorious in that game, and then followed it up with the touchdown to Alec Pierce under a minute left to beat the Jags this past week. But yeah, I think the Colts are a better team top to bottom, even without Shaquille Leonard, than the Titans. I know it's an away game, and I know it's a dome team going outside, but I still like the Colts in this game. Mitch, what do you think?
I think this all kind of lies on the health of Jonathan Taylor because he's dealing with low ankle sprain, which he's probably over at this point, and turf toe. And we all know how long turf toe kind of really takes to get you back in stride. And this Titans team, they're just feisty. And I think the presence of Shaquille Leonard is going to be really missed if he's not able to get out there and go, dealing with his broken nose / concussion that he's been trying to overcome again. But I want to take the Colts so bad because they seem like they're finally clicking a little better. But I think the Titans are just one of those teams that are going to run it right down your throat. And if you're not ready in that front seven, then you're going to get smacked in the face.
The Titans actually have the most players in the NFL with at least 3.5 sacks on the season. Rashad Weaver, Danico Autry, and Jeffrey Simmons, which I did not see that coming in to the season because I am not a big fan of their pass rush. But, so far they've absolutely done what they've needed to do. The other thing is the Titans have had the Colts number. The Titans have won 4 straight games against the Colts, which is their longest in history against the Colts. And those 4 wins are coming by an average of 9.5 points, almost 10 points a game. The other thing is that the Titans have also covered 4 straight against Indianapolis too, including their week 4 matchup when they beat them 24-17. Over the last 10 seasons, though, when teams meet twice in a 5-week span, the team that covered the first meeting, 32, 53, and 2 against the spread in the rematch. Jaden, what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I mean, to play into your point about their pass rush, I mean, they're the PFF's 4th-rated pass rush so far this season, and their number 1 edge rusher in Harold Landry hasn't played a snap, and he won't play a snap for this year. I believe it was a torn ACL for him in camp. And then I believe Bud Dupree's also been missing time, so it's really just been spearheaded by Jeffrey Simmons and how well he's playing. I also wonder why it is that the Colts have played 4 of their 6 divisional games in the first 7 weeks. They've played the Jags twice, the Colts twice, and they haven't played the Texans yet. And we're only 7 weeks in. Like, they're done. They won't see there's a chance that they could not see the Titans again until like week 14 of next year. And they play in the same division. I think that's weird. I don't know why they do that. Usually they always have the divisional games at the end of the year, and especially a division that's as bad as this one, that, the Texans could very well be in it in week 16. You would want to see all of the division matchups towards the end of the year, but personally, I think the Titans are going to come out on top in this one. I like what Derrick Henry has been doing recently. He's averaging 25 fantasy points per game over his last 3, not including, obviously, last week's bye week. He really has got it clicking. I don't think Jonathan Taylor is going to have it clicking as much just because he's coming off injury, hasn't played in a few weeks. And that was the famous thing, was he hasn't missed any time. He's never missed a practice, including high school. So it's going to be weird for him to not be playing every week and then just go out there and play again. He's never played coming off of an injury after healing from an injury before. So, maybe a little something weird. Plus, their offense has been the best it's been without him in it right now. I mean, I didn't think I'd be saying that the Colts offense looked the best when Matt Ryan throws the ball 60 times a game, yet here we are. And that's the part of this team that you want to attack. You want to throw the ball on the Tennessee Titans. Their cornerback room, probably the worst unit in the league right now. Caleb Farley kind of looks like a bust right now. I mean, having I think he had a slip disc or something in his back, and then the torn ACL.
Yeah.
It just doesn't look like that's going to end up working for him. He's lost so much lateral movement from that. But I like the Titans a lot moving forward, honestly. I think Derrick Henry is just able to move this offense. Just keep the ball moving. I don't know how or why. Obviously, they don't have any prominent receivers. Traylon Burks hasn't been able to step up, but it's just they find ways to win. They're that weird team. They did it all last year. They just find ways to beat other teams.
Yeah, and I think some of that's kudos to Vrabel. I think the whole locker room just buys into what he's giving out, and we talk about it with Dan Campbell. We kind of looked at him in that way, but the Lions have been off to their struggles so far. Yeah, for the first 3 weeks. Actually, I found out Dan Campbell's 0-10-1 against the spread, or straight up, my bad, as an underdog on the road in the NFL. So he's never won on the road when he's been an underdog, which is pretty much every game if you think about it. But yeah, I do agree with you guys on the Titans. Just basically feeding Henry and just letting him do his work. And that's going to be their game plan. It's coming, but how can you stop it is going to be the main question. My pick on this game, I'm still going with the Colts. I'm riding the hot hand right now. I love what I've seen from Alec Pierce. I mean, he's got more points over the last 2 weeks than the likes of like A.J. Brown, Debo, CeeDee Lamb, just to name a couple. And I think that's going to continue. Some people are talking about, with Jonathan Taylor coming back, maybe that'll take away from Alec Pierce, but I still think he's going to be a force in this offense. So yeah, my pick is Colts on the money line and Colts plus 2.5. Jaden, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm riding Titans on both. I think 2.5 is always like a weird spread to me that I just feel like I'm just picking a winner at that point. I don't like picking 1 point favor or like 1.2 point winners. I know that both teams are they both hit their strides after starting really slow, but the Titans get the extra rest of the bye week. The Colts had to go out and play, a full game against the Jaguars, put up 35 points. And it looked like I said, Matt Ryan had to throw the ball almost 60 times. Matt Ryan's, he's probably had an ice wrap around his shoulder he'll have it up until game time on Sunday. And this Colts defense still not healthy. This was the unit that we thought was going to carry this team. Was you're going to be able to be really good on defense, run the ball. Matt Ryan will do enough to get you there. And this Colts defense is just underperforming so far, whereas the Titans defense has been overperforming as far as the pass rush so far. So I'm taking the Titans on both.
Mitch, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm with you, Jaden. I'm going to take the Titans on both. That Colts O-line is not what we've hyped it up to be in years past. They have struggled. Ryan's been under pressure. They haven't been able to efficiently run. It just seems like they're a notch worse than what they have been in years past. And it's unfortunate because Matt Ryan's a solid enough quarterback to have gotten those teams in years past to where they wanted to be, I think. But I think they're just going to get hit in the throat by Derrick Henry on this. And a hobbled Jonathan Taylor, they're going to try to force feed him. And that O-line is not good enough to let him do what he needs to do. This might end up being one of those low-scoring games just because they're both so run-dominant. But I think that would just play perfectly into what the Titans like to do.
Yeah, and I think Derrick Henry is back to the Derrick Henry that we've seen, over his entire career. Last 3 games, I think he's had 20-plus points. So he seems to be, moving where he needs to move. The other thing I do want to note, and Mitch touched on it, is the Colts O-line. That is the worrisome for me, and with how well this Titans front seven's been performing, yeah, there's absolutely some concerns there. I just think the Colts have more playmakers, and I'm gonna ride with that hand. But speaking of units that have underperformed, let's go from Nashville and let's take a trip to the nation's capital. And we've got the Green Bay Packers, speaking of units that have been underperforming, and the Washington Commanders. I will give them the benefit of the doubt in this episode and call them the Commanders and not the Redskins. I'm becoming politically correct, I guess. But the line is set at Green Bay minus 4.5. Real quick, I mean, this has got to be a must-win for Green Bay. They have to win this game to kind of resurrect their season, which I don't think we ever thought coming into this season at week 7, because they had a pretty easy schedule when we looked at it, going into the season. They've scored 107 points through 6 games, which is a 17.8 points per game average. That's the fewest in any 6-game span with Rodgers as their starting quarterback. There's also been 31 different quarterbacks to score at least 17 points in a game this season. Rodgers is not even one of them. So in my mind, not only is this a huge game for him, but it's a big game for their defense as well, because we talked about how great this defense was coming into the season, and they've completely underperformed. I mean, I know the Jets put up 27, the Giants put up 27, the Patriots put up 24. I mean, they're consistently averaging 20-plus points a game. In my mind, Heineke is going to be at quarterback this week for Washington. I don't think this is a good team. I'm just going to go with who I think is the better team here, and I'm going to take the Packers on the money line and the spread. I think this is a typical get-right game for Green Bay that we see every season that kind of turns the tracks where they need to go in the right direction. Allen Lazard quietly has had a pretty solid fantasy season. I know he's been a little touchdown dependent, but I could see him having a big week this week. Jaden, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. This is your average, typical get-right game. You've got to win this one if you want to be a playoff contender. And I think we've kind of moved away from them being like a Super Bowl in the Super Bowl conversation. Like that's kind of over until they make like legitimate roster changes, and you've only got a week and a half to do so. I've heard that the price for Chase Claypool is a Christian McCaffrey-like package, according to Sports Illustrated, which I would love if I can squeeze 2 second-round picks and a fourth out of the Packers. Dear God, I wouldn't even know what to do with myself, because with our track record of drafting receivers, I think we'd be able to flip that pretty well. But they need to make that move. I mean, you have to do something. I know we saw that DJ Moore was supposed to not become available because they view him as a foundational piece, but then I also saw something today that said expect DJ Moore to be traded. So I don't really know what the deal is. Obviously, Carolina, Christian McCaffrey's their best player, so if you can go send a first for DJ Moore, I think you have to do so at this point. And that's really the only way that I could see them being in the Super Bowl contention conversation again, just because this defense hasn't been there. And even if it does pick it up, the receivers, there's no margin for error on this offense. You have to play 4 perfect games as Aaron Rodgers. You have to get 4 perfect games out of him to make it to the Super Bowl, and we just haven't seen that yet, even with like guys like Devontae Adams and then Jordy Nelson and a prime Randall Cobb. On the Commanders side of this, please lose this game. Don't do it to yourself. Do not. Lose the game, worry about draft position, reload, come back next year, because outside of the quarterback position, there's stuff on this team. If you go get a Bryce Young, a CJ Stroud, a Will Levis, maybe you can do something, but you can't with this current roster. I also don't think like the Sam Howell thing is weird, and I know everybody wants to see Sam Howell because you want to see what we got him. I think it's so interesting, the phenomena around this quarterback class, because there was no like true pecking order. Like Mike Renner of PFF had Sam Howell as his number 1 quarterback. He goes in the 5th round, and like everybody's like, he kind of slipped a little bit. We're talking about like, oh my God, please let's put the 5th round quarterback in. In any other class, if somebody got hurt, would we ever be saying, yeah, let's see what this guy's got, like let's give him a chance to the 5th round quarterback? No. It's just how bad this quarterback class is that there was no true favorite, so now everybody thinks that Sam Howell is like good when he's a 5th round player. There's a lot of problems with his game, and that's why he went where he went. But,
I think it's too early.
Yeah. I
also think he slipped because he plays like Baker.
Yeah, and that was a good thing.
Left sour
taste. That was a good thing right up until, a couple weeks into last season. And he also kind of looks like Baker, so nobody really wants that right now. But yeah, lose this game. Do yourself a favor. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff swirling around your franchise right now, so don't win the game and give yourself any momentum. If you lose, maybe Dan Snyder will sell the team out of frustration.
That'd be the biggest win for the for Washington is Dan Snyder. That's the biggest win that you can hope for this entire season, unless Jaden said, what you should do is just simply tank and go after a quarterback in this next draft. All right, let's get into the picks for the Packers and Washington Redskins. Yes, I'm going to call them the Redskins. I gave them the benefit of the doubt and called them Commanders, so now I can go back to Redskins. Like I said, the line is 4.5. I'm going to go with the Packers on both the money line and spread. Get right game for Aaron Rodgers. Got to be a game that they're going to win. If they don't win this game, I think we can start talking about LaFleur maybe on the hot seat as well. Mitch, what do you think?
I think this is definitely going to be a Packers money line and spread win. Like you said, get right game. And if it's not a convincing win, they have to make a push for one of these receivers that are going to be available at the deadline. It is do or die for this team. You've got Aaron Rodgers. You're on the last legs of championship contention right now with this roster.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think this is, for the 3rd time, this is a do or die game. This is a get right game. I think regardless of whether, they could go out and win by 40. I still think you need to go really aggressively on these receivers, whether it be DJ Moore, Chase Claypool. I know both Nelson Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne have been in trade talks. Kadarius Toney has been made available, even though he can't stay on the field. One thing, and I know we talked about it earlier, dude, I think the Saints should probably be looking to shop Michael Thomas. I think he's the highest cap hit on your team and can't seem to stay healthy. I think he would fit very well. He does what Devontae Adams does. He gets involved in the short game. He's crisp route runner. You could have that guy back. I'd at least make the call. You got to ask about it. it doesn't hurt to ask. But I do definitely think you need to make a move at receiver. But regardless, Packers on money line and spread.
Real quick, the other thing, one of the themes that I've kind of noticed across this season is this kind of the year of the backup quarterback. You know, we saw Cooper Rush come in and do really well. We've seen Bailey Zappi come in and do really well. Andy Dalton's had his moments as well down in New Orleans. Kenny Pickett obviously has had his moments. Geno Smith. You know, Geno Smith was the backup to Russell, and we've seen how he's done this year. Does Taylor Heineke have a chance to kind of remake his mark on Washington?
I mean, it's pretty much been downhill since the Tampa Bay game. Like, he's never hit that again since that wild card game. But, like I said, dude, if you're Washington, go out there and throw 4 picks. I just don't see any incentive to win. I mean, Ron Rivera, I think, is going to lose his job at the end of the season anyway, so you're not really playing to keep his job. If they lose this game like by a significant margin, I could see Ron Rivera getting canned as well this week. So.
Yeah, not a lot of optimism going around in Washington right now. At this point, you kind of got to hope that they lose. I mean, even Kane said it. He's looking forward to the draft already.
Yeah, no, I agree with you guys there. It was something. It's a trend that I've noticed across the National Football League this year, where these backups have actually come in and flourished, I guess you can say. But yeah, let's move on to our next game. I think this one's going to be one that you can probably take a nap in if you're in this respective area, and that is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers visiting the Carolina Panthers. Buccaneers 13.5 on the spread. You know, we keep talking about get-right game. I think this is another example of a get-right game. What do the Panthers have to offer? I mean, now that McCaffrey's gone, there's literally, there's literally nothing there. It's a good opportunity for this Bucs defense to get right, as much as it is an opportunity for the Bucs offense to kind of showcase what they can do. Carolina's league worst 1-5 against the spread. And if you go back to their last 20 games, they're 3-17 outright and against the spread. They're just an awful team right now. Like I said, I think this is going to be pretty much of a sleeper. Leonard Fournette, he's had at least 8.5 fantasy points as a pass catcher in 4 straight weeks. When you combine that with 3 games north of 20 carries, you have one of the most fantasy-friendly roles in the league. Mitch, what do you got on deck for this great game in Charlotte?
Like you said, kind of get-right game for that defense in Tampa, because they have been a massive letdown. They haven't been able to really produce in pass rush. Their run defense has been disappointing for what we've come to know them for. The likes of Vita Vea, he has not looked as good as we thought he was. Like the perennial all-pro type of guy that's just going to stuff up the middle every time. I mean, this week, he's got Chuba Hubbard and Deontay Foreman coming at him. He should be able to get some nice stops in there. It's not an imposing offense they're facing. I think this is the time that they can try to look to turn that corner and hopefully look like the Bucs that can win a championship like we all thought they could be able to coming into this year.
Yeah, the over-under in this game is 40. And if you're going to take the Bucs on the spread, you're anticipating the Panthers to score 10 points or less, which I think is absolutely in play in this game. Jaden, what do you got on deck for this game?
Yeah, I think this is the game where you finally go to the pumpkin patch, or you finally get brunch with your girlfriend or your wife. If you have this game on in your market, just cash that in. Miss out on this game. It's totally fine. You're not going to miss anything. Tampa needs to make a statement with this game. As a divisional opponent, you know, we wouldn't beat. I wonder what this spread would be if the Steelers didn't go out and beat them last week, because now there's like legit concern in Tampa, and I feel better about them than like the other teams that we saw coming into the season, like Green Bay and LA, because those teams have legit like positional groups that cannot be better than what they are unless they make a move, like the Rams with the offensive line. Obviously, they just lost Joseph Noteboom, making them even worse. Packers receiving core. Tampa Bay's got it. Like, the roster's there. It's just a problem of getting these guys to play up to their potential. We know that this is one of the best rosters in the NFL, top to bottom. There's a, borderline superstar at almost every position group. But they haven't been playing like it so far, and this is the game where you have to have that happen. It's Carolina. They've been getting drugged. I think the biggest loser from the Christian McCaffrey trade is Steve Wilkes, because if there was any chance that he becomes the next head coach, it was them, maybe maybe putting up a fight or beating a Tampa Bay. And that's just not going to happen with Donta Foreman and PJ Walker as your passer and your runner. Like, it's a really tough ask to ask them to come within 20 points here. If Tampa Bay can play the way that we expect them to, and I hope they do for their sake this week.
Yeah, I think that, we don't need to touch much more on this game. I think that it's got blowout written all over it. What do you guys got for your spread picks? Mitch, I'll go to you first.
I think they cover. I like that you didn't even mention the money line. We're all just trashing Panthers.
It's
no need to mention it.
Yeah, it's like minus 900, I'm sure. I haven't even looked at it, but I mean, if you want to throw it in like a random parlay piece, I don't think there's any chance the Bucks lose. And the aggravating,
it's like $5 to you if you put it in a parlay.
Yeah, the aggravating part I was in a survivor pool and I picked the Bucks last week, and obviously they lost, so I'm out. And I really am aggravated myself because if I had picked the Rams, which I was dead set on up until Sunday, I'd have been able to pick the Bucks this week, which seems like a slam dunk. And I think that that's going to be a consensus in survivor pools, is just picking against the Panthers every week. Jaden, what do you got in this game?
Yeah, I'm taking the Panthers on the spread now. I've got the Bucks on the spread and the money line without a doubt. There's legit cause for concern, and we'd be moving them into the same area where we have the Green Bay Packers if the Bucks can't seem to win this game. I especially with all the questions about, like, does Tom Brady still want to play, and does he love the game still, despite the fact that he's playing in his 23rd season in the NFL.
Cussing out O-linemen.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think this is the week that he puts that to rest.
Alrighty. Well, let's head a little bit further south, and let's go to the Giants, the 5-1 upstart Giants, taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jags are -3 in this game. They do come in as a favorite in this game, which you got to be wondering what's going on with that line. As we said, the Giants coming in at 5-1, coming off back-to-back wins over in London against the Packers and then beating the Ravens after being down 10 with, I think, 7 minutes left, which seems to be nothing new for teams against the Ravens being down in the fourth quarter and coming back and winning. The Jaguars are coming off a loss against the Colts last week, and the Jags have kind of come back down to earth. The first couple weeks after they beat the Chargers, everybody was like, wow, maybe the Jags are the real deal. Maybe this is a team that can contend, especially in the AFC South. But like I said, they've kind of come back down to life. Travis Etienne, he's picked up 157 yards on 20 carries over the past 2 weeks. In my mind, I think he's really separating himself from James Robinson. Jacksonville, 2-10 outright and against the spread in its last 12 games as a favorite. I'm going to go with the Jags in this game at -3. Nothing really to it except for, why are they favored? We've seen what the Giants have been doing. They're 5-1. They're one of the better teams in the NFC as of this year so far. It makes no sense to me why the Jags are favored in this game, and that's exactly why I would be taking them on the spread and on the money line. I do think that they can get enough done on the offensive side of the ball. The defense does have some question marks, but the Giants aren't really going to beat you too much, on the offensive side of the ball. The Giants have used play action at the second highest rate in the league, and that's been the big thing that's benefited Daniel Jones. I think if you shut down the play action, they're not going to be able to do much of anything. The wide receiving core is dreadful. It's probably led by Sterling Shepard. Is he still there? Is he hurt or out for the year? Yeah, he's out for the year. Darius Slayton, I guess, is there, and Rondell Robinson is coming on. I know Richie James is still fluttering around as well. But yeah, I'm going to go with the Jags in this game. Mitch, what do you got?
I'm going to take the Giants on both, actually, because I think the Jags are kind of at an identity crisis. They had it figured out. They thought they figured everything out. Robinson was going to be good, and then he kind of took some stutters back, and now ETN and him are battling it out, and they just can't stick with one or the other. And for some reason, it's not working for them. Usually a two-headed monster of a backfield works out for a team, but I feel like they're just choosing the wrong one at the wrong situation. And this Giants team, they find ways to win. And I think that they will be able to shut down Trevor Lawrence and the Jags enough to hold them off and win.
I just wonder why this line's 3. Like, it just stinks to me. It reeks. It's like, why? We've seen what the Giants have done previously over the past couple of weeks. We've seen what the Jags have done over the past couple of weeks. One team's playing well. One team's not. Why is this team favored? Jaden, what do you think?
I just can't. I'm seeing like Mitchell like just barely get his sentence off and then mute his mic and
I'm
turn
fighting
away.
for my life.
Yeah, Mitchell's battling the allergies and seems like maybe a little bit of a cold as well. So it's that type of the season, not only on the East Coast but pretty much everywhere right now. So Mitch, we're all praying for you for a nice speedy recovery.
Fighting for our life.
We're doing this pod for you, pal. I like the Jags in this game. We've said it for the last 3-4 games now. This is a get right game for Jacksonville. I mean, I felt like last week.
A get right game against a 5-1 team.
Yep. Felt like last week they started to show what they showed for the first 3 weeks again. After I was weeks 4 and 5, they just didn't look like the same.
Well, they lost by 8. They did go up 14 against the Eagles early on in that game, and then ended up losing by 8 in an absolute monsoon.
Yeah. And then 13-6 to the Texans. That's a conversation starter about what the hell's going on here. And then you fight against a team in the Colts that we've started to like, and they've started to really turn it on. I think it's just a matter of time for the Giants, man. I just can't the odds that you have a ball get snapped and the ball rolls out 10 yards away from Lamar. He immediately picks it up and throws it directly into a defender. They score, and then the second play that they have it's a strip sack. Yes, they're winning games, and I said, I love what Dable's been doing, but I just don't know if there's enough talent on this roster to sustain the record of a 5-1 team. There's just it's just not for them. And
I do worry about Jacksonville's front seven. They are good against the run D, and that's their entire identity in New York right now.
And that's what I said. I was just going to say that's what I was saying. That's what I was saying about the play action. If you can shut down the play action, then that's going to shut down their whole offense.
Yeah, and that's another thing is they're putting, and the reason why Daniel Jones, despite the fact that they're 5-1, it's not, you're not hearing anything about Daniel Jones. I mean, you're hearing more Saquon MVP conversation than anything good about Daniel Jones. But the thing is that, Andrew Thomas has been the best left tackle in football so far this season. He's been fantastic, and that's one thing that I will say I like about them is they have somewhat overhauled this offensive line from being in a huge weakness for multiple seasons now, and they've got a guy in Andrew Thomas seemingly. Evan Neal has really started to come on as well. But the things that Jacksonville struggles with is that their secondary, I just don't know if the Giants have enough firepower in the receiving room to be able to take advantage of that like teams like the Colts have for the last couple weeks.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You saw it with Pittman and Pierce last week, both having big weeks, and I don't think you're going to see that type of week from a Wan'Dale Robinson or from a Darius Slayton or a Richie James. You might see some glimpses of it with Wan'Dale just because of his pure talent. But yeah, and who knows when Kadarius Toney's going to come back. I don't know if that guy even plays football anymore.
Kenny Galladay?
Yeah, Kenny Galladay. He's just drifted off into oblivion as well. But yeah, my pick with this game, I know we went over it really quickly. Jags -3. I'm going to go with them on the spread and money line. Mitch?
I'm going to stick with the Giants. I think they're going to be able to pull it off. This is a scrappy team, and I just feel like the Jags have slipped off enough that they're going to have the mistakes that are going to cost them the game. Because the Giants, they don't make those mistakes. Daniel Jones is playing surprisingly well as a game manager this year, and they, even though this is going to be a good run D, they have the offensive line to work against it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I do think that the Giants do cover the spread. I think that they make it within a point. I don't think Jacksonville is that much better than the Giants are. And maybe if this is at MetLife, obviously if it's at MetLife, it's a little bit different game. But I don't trust either one of these teams that much at all. But I trust Trevor Lawrence more than I do Daniel Jones.
All right, well, let's bring it into the final game of the early slate, and it's going to be a nice AFC North division rivalry. Ravens against the Browns. Browns are going to be playing at the Ravens at M&T Bank. Ravens come in as a 6.5-point favorite. The Ravens, as we talked about, against the Giants, coming off that loss last week. The Browns coming off an absolute beatdown against all of a sudden the upstart Patriots with Zappy Hour at quarterback. A couple things that I do look at it in this game. Cleveland is 5-1 to the over this year, and I don't know if that's as much as them as it is their defense. Their defense has had some absolute awful games this year, in my opinion. And another defense that we talked about coming into the year as being a pretty good defense. And I know Myles Garrett's been hurt a little bit, same with Clowney, but still, this defense has just not performed to their capability this year. I do personally think 6.5 points is way too much in a division game. And I know you're going to be depending on Jacoby Brissett, but we've seen how the Ravens will get up in these games and then give it back. I like the Browns in this game. I think the Browns could end up winning this game. I don't think it would be that much of a surprise if they did. For the spread purposes, I'm definitely going to go with the Browns at 6.5. And you know what? I'll take a stab on the money line. I think this is going to come down to a final possession game. I know one team's got Justin Tucker, but I'm still going to go with the Browns in this game. Mitch, what do you got?
I think the Ravens are going to still win this game, but I think the Browns are going to cover it. This is going to be a tight game. That's just how the Browns have played every week outside of last week, because Brissett had that early turnover and it set them in a hole off the bat, and they were out of their normal game script where they just like to run it down your throat if it's still close. But my worry is Myles Garrett is going against Ronnie Stanley, and Ronnie Stanley looks like himself again. He looked fine last week, and I don't think they have the firepower to keep up with the Ravens. And I know the Ravens are notorious for blowing leads, but I don't think that offense is going to be able to come from behind if they fall down the double digits that Baltimore is magically blowing in 3 out of the 6 games so far.
Yeah, one other quick tidbit. You know, you're talking about the Ravens blowing games. The Browns have given up a league high 67 points in the fourth quarter this year, and Baltimore is being outscored by 42 points in the fourth quarter this year, which is the largest margin, and that's the most points that teams have given up. So something's got to give in this game. Some teams got to win.
Take your fourth quarter overs is what we're hearing.
Yeah, and one of these teams is going to have to come out on top in one of these in this fourth quarter to win this game. Jaden, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm not gonna say the words, but it rhymes with bet tight game for the Ravens here. I just figured, we don't want to overuse words on this podcast.
We can't say it for every game.
I'm looking at the schedule here, and I feel like I'm gonna say it for the rest of the slate. But the Ravens need a win here. This is a divisional game. You need a divisional win. Have they played in the division yet so far this year? Oh, Bengals.
Yeah, they beat the Bengals.
I was at that game. But they need to show that they can win a game, and they need to show that they can close out a game. Like, I believe it was, I heard a stat that was, they're the first team in NFL history to have a 10-point lead in each of their first 6 games and lose 3 of them. Which is
10-point lead in the fourth quarter too.
Yeah, like I don't know how they keep doing it, especially when you think about the Ravens and their identity and what they do well. It's run the football. It's control and close out games, and they're just not doing it right now. I don't really know how or why, but they just can't seem to figure it out. And Cleveland defense has been, I've said it multiple times, probably the most underperforming unit in the NFL so far this year. You've got the likes of Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney, Denzel Ward, John, like all these guys that are, Pro Bowl, all-pro level players. Obviously, Myles Garrett, one of the best players in football, and they're just not playing like it. And when Nick Chubb isn't breaking off those big 50-yard touchdown runs, it's going to be hard to win games. And, we are getting closer to the Deshaun Watson return, but I don't know if Jacoby Brissett's going to be able to get him to the point where they're going to be in position to make the playoffs even when Watson comes back, because you got to think he's going to need a tune-up game or two. He hasn't played football in, 2 years? You're going to need like a game or two to get up to speed, and I don't know if they'll be afforded that time.
The other thing that we could have mentioned at the top, J.K. Dobbins just came out. News came out today, getting arthroscopic knee surgery, so he's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks, which puts it on Kenyon Drake. Justice Hill will be back this week. Looks like Gus Edwards might be back this week, perhaps next week, but they're going to be depending on that running back by committee the rest of the year. Did we go over our picks, Jaden? What was your pick?
I'm taking the Ravens on both. They need this win.
Perfect. And Mitch, you're going with
Ravens money line, but I'll take the Browns on the spread.
All right, so we're all a little bit different on our picks, which is always great. But yeah, I think this is a divisional matchup, and we know how these AFC North battles go. It's tough to trust Jacoby Brissett going into opposing environment, but I'm gonna roll with it. That does it for the early slate of games. So let's hop into the afternoon games, and first of all, let's head to the Mile High City, and I think this is a very intriguing game, possibly the most intriguing game on the slate. Jets at the Broncos. The Broncos are a 1-point favorite, so virtually a coin flip in this game. Jets are coming off back-to-back wins, against the Steelers, the Dolphins, and then last week up in Lambeau against the Packers. The Broncos, we know their struggles are coming off a loss on Monday Night Football against the Chargers, and Mitch would be happy for me to mention that. There's a lot of question marks right now with this Broncos team. Since the Broncos beat the Lions 38-10 last year on December 12th, they've averaged just 14 points in their past 5 home games. Basically, if you can get on top of this team early, it almost eliminates what they've got in the home field advantage, especially, being at altitude. A couple other things to note. The Jets have had 0 turnovers in their past 2 games. They haven't gone 3 straight games without a turnover since 2010. That's 12 years ago. The other thing, Denver games are 5-1 to the under this season. The over-under for this game is 38. 20-17 would go under. 21-17 obviously would be a push. I'm going to go with the Broncos in this game, as long as Russell Wilson plays, because he is questionable right now. But I do think that the Mile High effect is going to play its toll. I do think that this defense is like nothing that the Jets have seen this year. And I think that, everything screams to take the Jets here because they're the upstart team. They've won 3 straight. The Broncos are struggling. They've got nothing working for them right now. There's no continuity within this offense. There's who knows what's going on with Nathaniel Hackett. Is he even going to be there next year? This is a game that they win. Mitch, what do you got?
I think this is the opposite of a get-right game for the Jets. I think they are going to be humbled by this defense because they have been amazing so far. And while Zach Wilson hasn't been horrible, he hadn't shown anything to give you extreme confidence. And I think it's going to catch up to him. This is a year 2 quarterback. I think we're going to see some of those younger quarterback struggles in this game, especially with Pat Surtain out there. Justin Simmons finally came back on Monday night. It just screams time for a little bit of a humbling for the Jets at this point because they have overachieved to this point in the season. And I'm going to take Denver on.
Is Denver going to get a red zone touchdown? I mean, that's the biggest question in this game. Is if they can get it
5 field goals.
Yeah, 15-12, you win. If they can get a red zone touchdown, I think they're lined up in great shape to win this game. Just because of like Mitch was saying, I don't know if the Jets have seen this type of defense, and it could be a humbling experience. But Jaden, what are you thinking with this game?
Yeah, I'm probably going to be taking Denver as well. I think I need like a rubber band, like an addict, to get me to stop saying that this is it. You need this win, a get right game. Is a game that they have to win. I'm like going through the.
That's just the point of the season we're in.
Every
right now.
team needs this win. But I like the Jets. I like the Jets a lot. The only problem is I feel like Denver. I've said it for like the last 3 weeks. They can't get much worse than they are right now. And God damn it, somehow. They keep doing it. And I really thought the game against LA was going to end up being that game, and it looked like that for 30 minutes of playtime. And then they didn't do anything in the second half, and they still managed to be in that game. I mean, you get 15 yards in the second half, and you still go to overtime. Like, something's got to give for Denver. And at home, in Mile High, you get a kind of a rookie quarterback. I mean, he's still technically like playing in his first 17 games here. I'm fairly certain he's never played at Denver before. And this is also a young team all around that has never really dealt with the altitude. So I think Denver gets a win that is much needed.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think that, this is I agree with Mitch in the sense that this is kind of a humbling experience. We've all been high on the Jets, and I do think that this is a really good team, and I think this is a team that's going to possibly end up in the playoffs when it's all said and done. Last year, September 26th, Zach Wilson lost 26-0 against Denver in Denver. 19-35, 160 yards and 2 interceptions, just to give you an idea of how he fared his last time in Denver. So, yeah, we're all on Denver in this game, which is kind of scary to think about for, like you said, how bad they've been coming off a short week where they went to overtime the previous week. But, yeah, kind of the theme of the pod and theme of this week, it's a get-right spot for the Denver Broncos. Moving on, our next game on the slate, I don't know what to think of this game. It screams blowout in my mind, but, we'll see what happens. Once again, it's the NFL and anything can happen any given week. We got the Texans against the Raiders. Raiders are a 7-point favorite in this game. They're coming off their bye week, as is Houston. Houston just doesn't have much to show, though. I know that they've got Dameon Pierce, who's been really great so far this year. I will absolutely take that, and I will still hold that he will have more points at the end of the year than Breece Hall, even though Breece Hall is coming on very strong here lately. But outside of that, I know Brandon Cooks is there, but really and truly, there's nothing that's going to scare you too much when it comes to the Texans. The Texans have converted on 29% of third down attempts this season. That's the second lowest mark in the NFL, ahead of only the Carolina Panthers. The other thing, Dameon Pierce, we talked about him. His NFL debut was underwhelming, but after week 1, the rookie has accounted for nearly 93% of the running back carries in Houston. So he's getting the ball quite frequently. One thing to note from a betting side, Las Vegas, 0-5 against the spread in their last 5 games coming off a bye. So they've kind of came out a little bit stagnant out of the bye. Derek Carr, when he was drafted, actually was kind of hoping the Texans would take him because he wanted to play for the team that his brother played for. And when they passed on him in the first and second round, his little quote, he said, I was a little kind of heartbroken over that. So maybe he's got some animosity toward the Texans. He's only 1-2 in his career against them. But once again, back to our theme of the week, a get-right game. I think this is it for the Las Vegas Raiders. I almost said Oakland, but the Las Vegas Raiders. I think Devontae Adams is going to have a huge week. I believe Stingley's probably going to be matched up with him. Josh Jacobs, I think, is going to run all over this defense as well, quietly having another great season from a fantasy running back perspective. And I think that the Raiders have just got way too many weapons, and Max Crosby and Chandler Jones are going to wreak havoc against Davis Mills. So, yeah, I'm going to go with the Raiders on the money line and the spread. Mitch, what do you got?
I think this is going to be an absolute beatdown. There's no reason why this team shouldn't be able to dominate against the Houston Texans. They need it. They have struggled this year. I'm not going to say the term for what we've been saying the entire time, but they need to find their groove on offense. And I think they will, because Jacobs has kind of turned that corner. They almost found their niche last game against the Chiefs, but it's the Chiefs. And the Chiefs find their ways of winning. I think the biggest thing they need is Charles, because he has been god-awful this year. He has no sacks. I don't think he has a single tackle for loss, and he might have 10 tackles, if that. He has been a waste of a contract to this point for them, and he is not going to be facing the greatest competition. I think he's going to be up against Laramie Tunsil, who is one of the better tackles in the league. He kind of just needs to prove that he still has that edge, because Crosby is going to be on the weak side. I just need to see something from him to give me optimism for their season going forward. But I think they definitely cover the spread and win.
Yeah, I don't have much else to say from what Mitch said. I agree with all those points as well. Jaden, what do you got on this? Might be of a snoozer of a game.
Yeah, gut tells me that this is a Raiders blowout. I am a little worried because both Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow still questionable going into Friday night now. So they may not play. I know neither is Renfrow back. I know Waller didn't play last week. I can't remember if Renfrow did. I know he had the concussion. And
2 weeks ago, because they
played against the Chiefs.
They had a bye last week. But Renfrow did play against the Chiefs because he ran it.
He blew that game for him because he ran it Adams.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Oh shit. But yeah, so that is a little optimism, I guess, for the Texans is that you really only have to worry about one guy, and that's Mac Hollins, who has been fantastic so far this year. In addition to Devontae Adams is okay for them. You can probably just throw like some safety or some guy you want to give a shot on him. But yeah, this just feels like a Raiders blowout. I like what I've seen from Dameon Pierce. I also noticed that Nico Collins is starting to close the gap a little bit with Brandon Cooks as far as target share goes. It really sucks that isn't John Mechie, because this was a guy that I liked a lot. And obviously, he's not going to be playing this year, which is kind of unfortunate. But it's I think it's very safe to say that it's time to look at the draft for the Houston Texans. So get right there.
Yeah, and
They weren't already looking at it.
it's kind of what we thought coming into the year too. I mean, unfortunately, they're still in this rebuild mode, and maybe after 2 or 3 years, they can start to reap those benefits. I don't think Davis Mills is the guy. I think that they absolutely will be going quarterback in this draft. I know that you guys both really like Davis Mills and what he brought to the table last year, and he did have some moments last year where he was a pretty good NFL quarterback, but it hasn't translated into this season. But yeah, we're all in agreement on this game, and let's move into, I believe, the final game of the 4:00 slate, and let's get some energy going, because this game is the marquee matchup of the week in my mind. We've got the Kansas City Chiefs going out to San Francisco to take on the San Francisco 49ers. Chiefs are a 1.5 point favorite in this game, which is not much at all, basically a coin flip in this game. I really like the Chiefs in this game. I think that, last week was kind of the game that they circled on their calendar, but, I always kind of envisioned the Bills are going to win that game. The Bills beat them in the regular season, and then Chiefs beat them in the postseason. I think that's kind of been what we've seen here recently. But yeah, I like the Chiefs in this game. I do worry about the running game. I don't think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is somebody that you're going to be starting this week. I know on our TikTok we have him as our sit of the week, so I don't see much from him. I also am worried about the Chiefs receivers. I know there's been a lot of buzz this week about OBJ possibly signing with the Chiefs as being that spot that they need to fill to be that Super Bowl contender. I don't know if it's going to come or if they're going to have to work with what they've got. We've seen some signs of life from Juju Smith-Schuster, especially last week. He had a touchdown, a couple of catches. I think he had like 70 or 80 yards in that game as well. So he's definitely coming back to life as far as what they signed him for. Marquez Valdes-Scantling had 3 targets for 0 catches last week. So he's a guy that needs to come to life for them. I do wonder with the Chiefs if the defense can hold up, because now that the 49ers are going to be incorporating, it looks like CMC into their offense, can this Chiefs defense shut them down to the ability that they need to? I'm going to go with the Chiefs on the money line and the spread here. Mitch, what do you got?
Yeah, I think this is just going to be a game where they outmatch the 49ers. The 49ers desperately need to prove themselves as kind of like one of those alpha teams in the division, shooting for the lead in it, but this is not the week. This is not a get-right game for them. I think Bosa and he should be able to make an impact on this game, so I don't necessarily see a blowout coming, but I definitely think the Chiefs are going to cover the spread and win this game. They're just going to outmatch them at all levels, I think, because the 49ers secondary is battered right now, and I don't think there's a way they're going to be able to contain those receivers, even if, like Tyler said, they are kind of underwhelming, and they are looking at outside sources, but they're better than what San Fran has to offer at the moment.
Jaden, what do you got for this game? I know that Mitch and I are both on the Chiefs. You feeling Niners?
Yeah, I like the Chiefs. I feel like I'm going to like the Chiefs in every game that they play for the rest of the year. Especially, I liked them against Buffalo. Obviously, didn't come out on top, but I still felt good about how they played. It wasn't like a uninspiring performance. They had a chance to win at the end. They didn't. It happens. But obviously, the thing I'm most interested in is what is the role of Christian McCaffrey. I know he's only going to be getting in the red zone package this week. I feel like a Christian McCaffrey anytime touchdown just feels very good this week. I feel like they're going to want to get him in the end zone, get the fans excited, get him excited, get the offense excited. Everybody's excited when Christian McCaffrey scores touchdowns. But just moving forward, like I'm very excited to see what he can do in that offense with Kyle Shanahan. I know Kane was gassing himself up about calling that, so good for him, whatever. But I still think the Chiefs come out on top in this one. I think they've just got too much offense, especially without Christian McCaffrey being able to get a full workload. I think Patrick Mahomes is just going to be too much for the Niners to handle. Nick Bosa is coming back this week, which is big against that tackle duo in Kansas City because it's obviously not been the best so far. That's probably the one thing that they've had a lot of trouble with. So that's really big for the 49ers. I think they cover, but I think I'll take the Chiefs on the money line.
Couple things to note. Kansas City's covered the past 6 meetings between these two. That dates back to 2002. Also, this is the first time these teams have met since the world came crashing to an end with COVID. They met last time in the Super Bowl where the Chiefs were able to beat the 49ers. I think it was like 31-20 in that Super Bowl. But yeah, this is going to be a great game. These are two teams that we all envision in the playoffs. Maybe this is a Super Bowl preview. It could definitely end up happening. Who knows? With the way things are shaping out and what San Fran got with McCaffrey, and we know how the Chiefs have been. So there you go. You got a pod member Super Bowl pick playing in this window. But yeah, let's hop over to our next game. And I did miss a game at our 4:00 window. How could I forget Mitchell McDonald's own the Los Angeles Chargers and the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks will be going to Los Angeles. Chargers come in as a 5-point favorite in this game. I think this is going to be a shootout of a game. I do think that the Chargers are going to end up coming out victorious just because I think that they've got more to offer than Seattle does. But I still think Geno Smith is going to throw for 250, 300 yards in this game. I don't think that that's out of the realm. The other thing, Justin Herbert, expected to make his 39th career start. He needs one touchdown pass to become the 4th player in NFL history with 80 pass touchdowns in his first 40 games. Mahomes, Dan Marino, and Kurt Warner are the others. One guy that we listed as one of our starts this week, Mr. Kenneth Walker. He's scored 19 fantasy points in his first career start on Sunday against the Cardinals. In Week 7, he gets this Chargers defense that's coming off playing on Monday night in an overtime game, so they might be a little worn down. Geno Smith, 11-3 against the spread in his last 14 starts. Like I said, I'm going to go with the Chargers on the money line, but I'm going to go with the Seahawks on the spread here with the 5. I think that the Chargers are going to win this game somewhere in the 35-31 type range, where I think that Seattle might get a touchdown late in the game to get that backdoor cover. But I'm going to go with the Seahawks and Geno Smith on the spread, but I do think the Chargers come out victorious. Mitch, I might have a feeling on how you feel in this game, but yeah, let's see what you got to say.
I definitely think we're going to win this game. Should be able to win this game. We outmatched them in most levels of the game. But my biggest concern is J.C. Jackson and who they put him against if he's in, because he has been an absolute liability this year and a waste of money. But I think part of that might be him just kind of getting over the residual effects of the surgery he had in the offseason. So hopefully he sees some strides of not being a complete liability in coverage, because he has been the cause of our issues so far in the secondary. And our run D's actually improved, it seems like. I mean, the Browns game was a little rough, but who isn't going to suck against them? Last week, we kind of played a lot better than expected against the Broncos. And I think we're just making the strides that we need to get more cohesion on that defensive line with the absence of Joey Bosa. And if I see a giant spread for the Chargers, I instantly assume it's not going to cover, because we are in too many heated battles of games. We can never close out a game, and it always ends up close. So I do think Seattle will manage to cover the spread, because 5 is kind of rough to deal with on that.
Jaden, what do you got?
I think this might be my upset pick of the week here.
Ooh.
I think there are some bad matchups in this game for the Chargers. I'm sorry. I know you. I know you're flipping me off. I see you. I got it. But there are some bad matchups in this game. I was going to talk about J.C. Jackson. I didn't realize he had a 29.6 PFF grade. He's like dark red, about as dark as it gets. That's scary for the Chargers. I mean, you're giving him $82 million. I don't know how much of that is guaranteed, but if this is the kind of play that you're going to be getting for a little bit, that's not good.
Like 40.
And he will
especially going against go for it.
He's likely going to be matched up with either DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett unless they try to hide him in the slot, which I'd
rather him be against DK.
Also, you have our start of the week, Kenny Walker, is a very bad matchup for the Chargers. We thought that this run defense was going to be improved this year. It has not to this point. Nick Chubb runs all over everybody, but Nick Chubb ran all over them more than he would run all over other teams. And Kenny Walker's looked fantastic in his start and a half with the full workload in Seattle. I think Seattle could get this done on the road, man. And I think this would be a huge win for Seattle. Like, obviously, I believe that pushes them to a winning record. They'll be 4-3.
Top of the division.
I was about to say, depending on what happens in the other NFC West games, that could put them in the lead, especially with LA on a bye. Arizona's now definitively 3-4, and the 49ers play the Chiefs. So this could be a humongous win for Seattle, and something that
it'll be a normal loss.
The Chargers at 4-2, they just don't feel 4-2. Like we expected so much more from them coming into the year, and they haven't been that team so far. Like, none of their wins have felt convincing. Obviously, they beat Denver the week before. Brandon State, I don't think that gets talked about enough just because they won, but dude, that was an all-time bad decision by Staley. I have not been overly critical of him like everybody else has, but that was just like football 101. That moronic, in my opinion.
I think I have talked about it to you guys before. Like, this doesn't feel like a 4-2 team, but we have injuries out the wazoo, and if it were to happen to us at any point in the year, thank God it's now when we're facing teams like Seattle,
Houston,
Denver, and the likes of the Houston Texans. Yeah, we have the easy part of the schedule before we get Bosa back and face the likes of like the Chiefs and all of the division leaders.
I was going to say, I think that's why we have them ranked at 5 in our power rankings, is because we're anticipating these guys coming back from injury and this team getting back to where we expected them to be. You know, I had them projected to be 13-4 at the beginning of the year. I don't think that's going to happen. But I do think that they can still claw out 11, maybe 12 wins when it's all said and done, just because once they get these guys healthy, they're going to be one of the better teams, not only in the AFC, but in the NFL.
Yeah, and their one saving grace has been one of my guys in this past draft, Jamari Sawyer. I watched the Steelers pass on him 5 times, which hurt a lot. He's a guy that can play like 4 out of the 5 positions on the line. Was drafted as a guard. Now he's playing left tackle, and he's doing it well in place of Rashawn Slater. And, you think about this Chargers team right now without Rashawn Slater, you think, okay, well, if we have a good pass rush, we should be able to get home, affect Justin Herbert, who's currently playing injured. But Jamari Sawyer's been playing very well, and Seattle has no pass rush to speak of. So, and additionally, your best receiver, because have we got a status report on Keenan Allen?
Oh, he's been running full routes. He's questionable for the game. I'd expect limited reps, but yeah, he should be able to play.
So whether he plays or not, your number one receiver, your number one target for Justin Herbert for this game is still going to be Mike Williams. And you got a guy, another one of my guys in this fast class, Tariq Woolen.
6'4"
who
boy.
I drafted it in the second round of the Seahawks, which I believe I was like, that might be a little bit too high, but I really like the fit. And they took him in the 4th round, and he's had 4 picks so far this year. And he's big, he's fast, just like Mike Williams. I think he's a great matchup for him. I just think there's a lot of bad matchups in this game for LA, and they like to keep games close, and I think it might just come back to bite him in this one.
All right, well...
what matchup is against Austin Eckler?
There isn't one, but I'm not going to talk about that.
Which is why I think it's going to be a shootout.
It doesn't fit your narrative, so
no, it doesn't, and I'm not going to talk about it.
The over-under is 50 in this game, and 27-24 I think is absolutely doable in this game. But yeah, so we got Jaden on Seahawks moneyline and Seahawks spread. Mitch is going to be on, I think, Seahawks spread, Chargers moneyline. Is that right? And I'm going same as Mitch. I'm going to go Chargers going to win the game. But I think Seattle ends up covering the 5-point spread. All right, well, let's hop into the last two games of the week, the two primetime games, Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football. Let's start first. Let's go down to gorgeous Miami, Florida, and we have Jaden's own Pittsburgh Steelers going to the Miami Dolphins. Dolphins come in as a 7.5-point favorite. A couple things to note in this game. Tyreek Hill has had 3 games with 150 receiving yards this season. He is one such game shy of tying Mark Duper's record in 1984 for the most such games in a single season in Dolphins history. Deontay Johnson is consistently ranked as a top receiver on this offense, but he has only reached 14 fantasy points just once this season. Over the past 6 seasons, Miami 11-3-1 against the spread as a home favorite. I like the Steelers on both. Oh yeah, you heard it.
Doing this to yourself.
Minka's going to be back. It looks like Pat Freiermuth is going to be back in this game as well. I think that this team is buzzing off their win. I know that all the hype is around Tua and Tua coming back. It might take a little bit, maybe a game, for him to get back up to the speed and get back to the chemistry that he had with Waddle and Hill. And I think they might be able to catch him here. I've got the Steelers winning this game in a close one, 24-23, when it's all said and done. And yeah, I think that they're going to be able to do enough. Kenny Pickett's going to be starting in this game, I believe. Correct, Jaden?
Mm-hmm.
And I will trust him. I would trust him more than Mitchell Trubisky. I know Trubisky was able to come away with the win last week. But I think that, the Steelers have got weapons on the offensive side, and it's more or less just finding out ways to utilize them. Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Chase Claypool, Najee Harris. See if Najee Harris can have a get-right game with 15 to 17 points. I do think that this is an explosive offense, but like I said, I think it's going to take a little bit of time for them to get their mojo back. So, yeah, I'm going to go with the Steelers plus 7.5, and, yeah, I'm riding with the underdog here and taking them on the money line. Mitch, how you feeling about this Sunday night battle?
I'm not quite feeling that good about the Steelers. I think they can be competitive in this game, but in the end, I don't think they have the speed for the likes of Waddle and Hill to be able to keep them from breaking this game open. I think they can keep it within a touchdown. I would put hope into them that they can at least game manage enough to burn clock and not get blown out. But I just see this as a good opportunity for the Dolphins to start clicking again, because Tua has missed his time and they need to get back to where they were right before he got those concussions and prove that they are one of these teams that is going to be competing in the AFC to hopefully represent them in the Super Bowl.
Jaden, what are your thoughts? I want to hear what you've got to say about your very own Pittsburgh Steelers, who, like I said, coming off a win. And every year people want to say, this is the year Mike Tomlin's not going to finish 500. This is year. They're 2-4. They win this game. They're one game under and right back in the thick of it in the AFC North.
I will say, over the last, 6-7 years, this is the lowest that I've felt as a Steelers fan. Just because, I don't know, man.
Wait, even when Duck Hodges had to start games?
It was fun. At least it was fun. Like, it was just like, every time we went, it was just like, oh my God, you just lost to Duck Hodges. It was the entire season was a meme. It was hilarious. Plus the Mason Rudolph, the getting his face mask taken off by Earl Thomas, and then obviously getting his head taken off by Myles Garrett. I can't with this team moving forward. I mean, it was a nice win against Tampa, and a lot of things that, you would, walking into that game, no starting corners, no Minkah Fitzpatrick. How on earth does Tom Brady not give the Steelers a 40-piece? It's unfathomable. I have no idea how. And I think it's the regression of coming back to the mean here is going to happen this week, and it might be rough for Pittsburgh. They like to work a lot over the middle. That's a lot of what Mike McDaniel's offense is built off of. I like Devin Bush. I like Miles Jack. I don't think that they're going to be able to handle what this offense throws at them. I think that Mike McDaniel, I love Mike Tomlin. Mike McDaniel's a smarter offensive mind than Tomlin is a defensive mind. I mean, Tomlin, I think at this point in his career has kind of moved to the CEO type of coach, where instead of being not an intelligence guy, but kind of like he's not really a defense guy or an offense. He's just kind of the CEO at this point. And I think
legislative.
Yeah, I think
he uses his charisma.
Yeah, and I think Mike McDaniel's he's got all the weapons, and you don't even have to like really get like a whole lot working with Tua just to be able to do things against this defense. I don't know if anybody really knows or even really cares, but Alex Highsmith is the league leader in sacks right now, which blows my mind. I mean, if you would have told me, like I said to you, if you would have told me that we had the league leader in sacks in week 6 and TJ Watt has been out for the last 5 weeks, I would have told you, I don't know what I would have told you.
You're 4-2 or 5-1.
Yeah. But that is the matchup, though. If Alex Highsmith can come in, play well, because I believe Greg Little is going to be starting for the Dolphins again this week. Teron Armstead has been out for the last 2 weeks. And, I mean, that's a constant for the Dolphins. Teron Armstead, you're never going to get a full season out of him. So, hopefully he doesn't play this week. I don't know if I want to win this game. As a Steelers fan, we need a franchise tackle. And the more games we lose, the closer we get to one. I also don't like the matchup for our receivers. Xavier Howard's still there. And the pass rush, they do stop the run pretty well. Najee Harris can't really seem to get himself together yet. I thought, the metal plate's coming out of his foot. We see a little bit more. Hasn't really happened. I hope it happens. I'm rambling here, but I don't really have any faith in a Steelers win or even a Steelers cover this week.
All right, so that alludes into the question. I said I'm going with Steelers on the spread and the money line. Mitch, what do you got?
I'm going to take the Dolphins on the money line, but I think the Steelers cover the spread.
Jaden?
Yeah, like I said, I think I'm going to go Dolphins on both. I can't see a world in which Tyreek Hill doesn't have 250 receiving yards.
So you're going with the emotional hedge here and saying if my team wins, I'll gladly be wrong.
Yep. If I can't be let down if I didn't have any expectations.
All right, well let's hop into the final game on the slate, and I'm hoping that there's going to be some MLB baseball playoffs on Monday night, because probably not going to be watching this, but it's the Bears at the Patriots. Patriots, like we said, all of a sudden upstart. They're 7.5-point favorites in this game. They've won back-to-back games, shut out the Lions, and then beat down the Browns last week as well. So they're flying high. Big question mark about, is Mac Jones going to be the starter? It looks like he's scheduled to make his return, but I'm a big fan of Zapiawa. So it begs the question, if there are glimpses of Mac Jones that just aren't up to Bill Belichick's standards, do they make the move mid-game? Do they wait till after the week? But I still think that this quarterback position is up for grabs, in my opinion, more so than any other quarterback conversation. I know that Cooper Rush thing was talked about for a while. We saw him kind of come back down to earth last week against the Eagles. I think this is the most intriguing quarterback debate and quarterback position battle in the NFL right now. A couple things to note. Jacoby Myers, he has scored double-digit fantasy points in all 4 of his games this season that he has played in. New England, 62-32 against the spread in October under Bill Belichick, and they've covered 5 straight. They're 3-0 against the spread in October this season. Justin Fields, 0-2 on Monday Night Football. He has a QBR of 41.4, which ranks him 59th among 82 quarterbacks with multiple Monday Night Football starts since QBR started tracking in 2006. I'm going with the Patriots on the money line, and I'm going with the Patriots on a spread. I know that there is some weather moving in. Looks like some pockets of rain are scheduled in the forecast. But I think that the Patriots are going to win a kind of a slugfest game. I don't know if the Bears are going to be able to put up, 2 touchdowns in this game. So I got to think that the Patriots are going to win this game something of like 27-10 maybe when it's all said and done. Mitch, what do you got?
This is going to be a bruiser game. I see a lot of running the football. That's kind of the identities of these teams at this point. Play good defense and hope to establish the run game and then build around that. And I do not think this is going to be a very high-scoring game. I don't think the Bears are a great team, but they have a good enough defense to keep this Patriots offense in check. So I think the -7.5 might be a little too generous to New England. I think they should be able to cover unless some ridiculous Justin Fields pass happens, but he rarely passes, so that shouldn't be that much of an issue. I think they'll be able to prove, well, the Patriots are going to be able to prove that they can win these tight games again. This is going to be a snooze fest. A lot of running the ball, a lot of defensive play, and maybe a few big plays in there with Justin Fields, because that's about all he's good for in passing.
One thing to note is the all-time head coaching wins ranking list, and Bill Belichick right now is tied with George Halas at 324, so he could beat Halas's old team, the Bears, and get to that 325 in sole possession a second, still trailing Don Shula. But Jaden, what are you thinking for this snooze fest on Monday night?
Yeah, this is going to be another rough primetime game that we're all forced to watch because we're degenerates and we love football. But you say pockets of rain, I hear advantage Patriots. I mean, we saw what happened in the game where it was windy and crazy in that Buffalo game on Monday night last year, and Mac Jones threw 2 passes, and they beat the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, but in the same sentence, the Bears won that 49ers game in the rain.
Football game. In pockets of rain and a flood on the field.
Neither was that game in Buffalo.
But big thing to watch here. Justin Fields, second worst quarterback in the NFL against man coverage. Patriots run more man coverage than anyone. I think this is going to be unfortunately for Justin Fields, this is going to be a primetime display of not good football for him. I don't know how on earth the Bears got back-to-back primetime games.
Somebody's paying a lot of money.
This is their third primetime game this year because they played against Green Bay on Sunday night. How is this happening? Who? Why?
Between Russell Wilson and the Bears on primetime, I'm sick of it already 7 weeks into the season.
Jesus Christ, man.
Meanwhile, Chiefs-Bills were a 4:30 game last week.
Well, they wanted Romo for that one. God's sakes. I don't like Romo either, dude. Something about him. I can't get with him.
Well, he gets Mahomes and he gets the Cowboys. You hear two things out of him pretty much. It's him glorifying one or the other.
But back to
talking about weather in this game. Bears have lost 14, or they've had 14 fumbles this year, lost 5. Patriots have had 8 fumbles and lost 5. So it seems like 2 fumble-prone teams in bad weather screams this could get really ugly.
Yeah, and another thing to watch here for Chicago. Obviously, this is not a team that's going to be competing for anything other than the number 1 overall pick. Some running backs that could be on the move. I mean, I think you got to add David Montgomery to that list. I think that he's a player that could be on the move. I'm pretty sure he was a 2019 draft pick, maybe 2020, if not. So his contract's got to be coming up pretty soon, and I don't think he really fits into their timetable, especially with all the draft picks that they're going to be inheriting over the next couple years. You got to imagine that they take a running back with one of those with a higher ceiling than David Montgomery, as well as Robert Quinn. I know he's sucked, but I think that might just be like a motivation, like, hey, I'm playing for the Bears and we're awful. I'm not really going to try. He's never been a high motor guy in run defense. He's a try and beat my tackle and get sacks kind of guy. So I think the Bears should be looking to shop both of them and really anything else that they possibly can. But back to this game, probably going to be taking the Patriots on both. I just can't see Justin Fields having a good game, and as a result, the Bears having a good game.
I think these are 2 teams heading in different directions, too. We've seen it over the last 2 weeks. I know the Bears got close with Minnesota. I was at that game, and Smith-Marset fumbled that game away to Cam Dantzler. But, they lost to Washington last week. I know that they probably played a better game than Washington, but they ended up losing that game. And I just, the over-under in this game is 39.5, and it screams under, in my opinion. So, yeah, I'm with Jaden on this. I do think, the Patriots end up not only win this game, but cover the spread as well. And, Mitch, what'd you have?
I had that the Pats win money line, but I think the Bears cover because I don't see it being high scoring enough for that to be a true cover on this of 7.5. All
right. Well, I think that pretty much does it for our picks. I do want to do one last segment with you guys and go over your lock of the week. Which game do you feel the most confident in? We're going to be posting a TikTok probably Saturday evening, Saturday afternoon with what we call our pod parlay. Basically, we each pick a spread. throw it into a parlay, like a buck or two each, and see what happens. But my lock spread of the week is going to be the Detroit Lions. I know it's 6.5. I personally would buy it up to 7 just so you don't get screwed on that half a point. But I think this is a game. I mentioned it earlier. I think that they can win this game, but I would definitely think that they're going to cover this game in a game that I think is going to be a shootout. I think it's 49 points. But I do love this offensive line. They're going to get their weapons back this week. We know what this offense has done with their weapons and when they're healthy. So, yeah, I think the Lions are going to hang around in this game. And like I said, I think at the end of the day, they might even be able to squeak out a win. Mitch, what do you got?
I'm going to take the Chiefs on the spread because it's -1. Why not? If they win, you get the spread. It's a push if you don't, if they win by 1. Odds are in their favor on this one.
I think it's 1.5. So you might want to be careful with that half point.
That was ESPN's one.
Okay, I saw it on FanDuel earlier at 1.5, and I used their lines. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you on that. I do think the Chiefs end up winning that game. If I were somebody, I would probably play it safe and just take the money line so you don't get screwed over by that 1 point. But yeah, I do agree with you on that as well, Mitch. And then Jaden, what do you got stirring up over there?
Well, I picked them to win in an upset fashion, so it only makes sense that I take them on the spread here.
Your lock of the week.
My lock of the week, dude. I can't see the Chargers blowing out a team right now. I just can't see them blowing out, especially a team like Seattle.
Oh, the spread.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably going to take the spread as our lock of the week, but in the pick sheet, I will have Seattle. I can't see the Chargers blowing out a team like Seattle that's going to run the ball a lot and control the clock. Dude, I never thought I'd be saying we're going to see a Geno Smith, Justin Herbert shootout at any point this year, but here we are.
Not going to be much of a shootout if they're running every play, apparently.
They're going to run every play and pass every play.
All right, well, I think that pretty much does it for our picks, our spread picks. You guys got any last notes on this week that we're kind of labeling as the get right week in the NFL?
Go Dolphins.
Get right, people. Get right.
All right, well, for Mitch and Jaden, and I will include Kane in as well. This is Tyler signing off on the Blitz Pod. Make sure you check out our Instagram. We're going to be posting our picks up there. Comment on our power rankings, especially if you disagree with some stuff. We love sparking up controversy. We love sparking up conversation. Check us out on TikTok as well. We're on YouTube, Apple Music or Apple Podcasts, Spotify as well. So definitely give us a listen. But for everybody here at the Blitz Pod, this is Tyler signing out, and have a great weekend.